Welcome to Revenue Rehab, your one-stop destination for collective solutions to the biggest challenges faced by marketing leaders today. Now head on over to the couch, make yourself comfortable, and get ready to change the way you approach revenue. Leading your recovery is modern marketer, author, speaker, and chief operating officer at Tegrita, Brandi Starr.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Revenue Rehab. I am your host, Brandi Starr, and we have another amazing episode for you today. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I am excited to have some experts with me today. I am joined by Lisa Kelly and Ruvi Makuni. Lisa is the president and founder of Kelly Wellness Consulting, Inc. and the Workplace Wellness Center of Excellence, and has been cultivating healthy changes in the workplaces for individuals across the globe for over 25 years. Lisa's mission is to create an innovative and collaborative landscape for workplace wellness that fosters inclusive and responsive wellness solutions benefiting employees, employers, and communities. As a certified executive coach, she supports the well-being and professional growth of senior leaders. Ruvi is a global workplace wellness specialist and a certified Stress Master Associate who is passionate about supporting organizations to empower their teams so that they can thrive in their careers without sacrificing their health. As an in-home personal trainer for busy professionals in 2014, Ruvi started to notice that many professionals were on a never-ending treadmill, suffering physically and mentally from the toll of the go lifestyle. She thus pivoted her career and made it her core mission to highlight the impacts of stress on modern-day professionals and how organizations can support their employees in managing stress and preventing burnout. Lisa, Ruvi, welcome to Revenue Rehab. Your session begins now.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yes, I am so excited to have you guys. Mental health is something I'm very passionate about and tend to be outspoken about my own mental health. So really excited to have you guys on the couch today to dig into our topic. But before we get there, I like to break the ice with a little woosah moment that I call buzzword banishment. So we'll start with you, Lisa. Tell me, what buzzword would you like to get rid of forever?
Well, it's a buzzword that I hear so much, and it's, I guess it's two words. It's called crazy busy. And how many of us have used those words? I'm crazy busy. I'm super busy. I'm crazy busy. And I thought it was really fitting for the topic and talking about executive stress and mental health. So yeah, it's one that I just wish we would just eliminate from our vocabulary because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we just further ingrain the fact that we are stressed when we use that term, right?
Well, guilty. That is one that I definitely can say I use all the time. I actually think I just said it this morning.
There you go.
So we're going to put that one in the box and not be crazy busy.
Yeah, there you go.
Ruvi, what about you?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily banish it, but instead of work-life balance, I prefer work-life integration or harmony, pivoting from, because balance is, that can be challenging at times. So I prefer to use work-life harmony instead.
I like that as well. That is one I have learned over the years to do better at, talking about that integration or that harmony instead of balance, because balancing does kind of imply that something's always falling. And that's not the goal, because that is stressful. Which I think leads us to why we're here. And so now that we've gotten that off our chest, Lisa, I know that I asked you guys to join me here, but I'd love for you to tell me what brings you to Revenue Rehab today.
Well, as you introduced us, we are both, certified executive coaches. I'm a certified executive coach, and Ruvi is through my program as certified executive wellness coach. And as you read out, quite adept at stress mastery, and we both are. And we work in tandem, in serving and supporting executives. And so May, as we know, is Mental Health Month. And I thought, and at your invitation to speak on the topic of executive wellness and executive burnout, I thought it was a really, timely topic to be bringing out. And especially because leadership burnout is on the rise. And while some executives may not use the word burnout, many are. According to statistics from Deloitte and Gallup, like up to 70% of executives are experiencing, burnout or actually considering leaving their workplace, which is kind of scary because these are our leaders, right? So
Yeah.
it's an important topic we need to have in discussion around.
Awesome. Yeah, that 70% number is both high and scary. And so I also believe in setting intentions. It gives us focus, it gives us purpose, and most important, it gives our audience an understanding of what they should expect from our discussion. And so, Ruvi, if you can, give me what's your best hope for our conversation today?
Well, I hope that we can share some, some tips where executives and even just people in general can actually take away and start implementing daily, to help manage their stress. I always think it's great to actually take a proactive approach to burnout. So if there are things that you can start doing to prevent you to getting to that burnout stage. But in addition to that, also looking at, taking a good look at how are things going today for you? How have you been on that go treadmill, and you can tell that things are not going well for you. So perhaps this can be a pause and give you some encouragement to take a pause, reflect, and hopefully we can share a few strategies to start, implementing some changes today, this month as well.
Awesome. Well, I want to start first by having you both to define or give us your view on what burnout is, because it's a term that a lot of people use. And, as Lisa said, a lot of people don't necessarily identify with burnout, but they may identify with what it means. So let's level set on what is burnout. And I'll let either of you begin.
Yeah, well, if I may, I'd like to recite the World Health Organization because they actually created a diagnostic category and known as burnout. So they put it in as a condition or health issue, if you will, because it's become so prevalent. And they actually cite it as an occupational phenomenon. And I just saw that, and that was kind of, stood out for me. But really quickly, it's a syndrome that conceptualizes resulting from chronic work stress that has really not been identified or successfully managed, and it's really characterized by, as they identify, three dimensions, right? Feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativity or cynicism about their job, and reduced professional efficacy. And I just want to give an example. I heard one of the Google's well-being directors share in another podcast his experience with burnout, and he said for him, he knew he was in a significant state of burnout when he could not get out of bed in the morning, and it was all he could take to get out of bed in the morning to go to his work. And hopefully we want to prevent people from getting to that point, right? There's different stages, but if you're at that stage, that's pretty significant and serious.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. And I think one of the things that, the energy depletion is probably something that, is a common symptom. And the distance, but that last one that you hit on in just feeling the negativity and cynicism, like that is one that sometimes you don't really recognize as burnout. And, I can think of different times in my career where I've hit that wall and been on that treadmill. And just, as you said that, almost like I had memories kind of play in my head of like, oh yeah, I became the negative Nancy, and it was like everything was always wrong. And, nothing was ever going to go right. And it was just, and I'm not that person. I'm extremely upbeat and optimistic, just in general. And at that time, I didn't recognize that as burnout. To me, it was everybody else was the problem. The company's the problem, that this is the problem. And that really is a symptom there. Ruvi, I'd like to hear your perspective as well.
Yeah, to add to that, it certainly adds to the dynamics of the company. If you have one person who's feeling negative, it will definitely start infiltrating the culture of the company. But also, it's important to realize that we do have workplace burnout. But we have a situation now where, people are dealing with workplace stress in addition to home stress. We can burn out from whether it's taking care of a loved one or relationship burnout or even academic burnout. So it's a combination of so many factors.
Yeah.
If you have an individual who's juggling, home, family life and work life, all of those, if you're just working on one component, the stress of, work might be manageable, but sometimes it's overcommitting to so many different things that can cause that overwhelm and burnout. And so I guess that's where we can lead into boundaries, as we'll talk about shortly, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that B word is my favorite B word. I've been through a lot of therapy, and that I think is one of the biggest lessons that I have had to learn is setting proper boundaries and realistic expectations of what I can and can't accomplish. So yes, we will definitely get to the B word.
I like that, the viewer.
Yes, I want to give you guys a thought that I hear and let you guys react to it. So I'm in a lot of, communities and Slack groups and things where I'm interacting with other executives. And, it's a tough gig. Like you have to do the actual job. So running marketing in this case, but, executives of all all types, you have to do the actual job. You have to manage people and deal with all the people challenges. You have to be able to manage up to the CEO and sideways to your other peers. And, there's like all of these different aspects that come with being in a leadership role, in addition to all of the aspects, as you mentioned, of if you have a family, a spouse, like all of the other things. And I've heard some people say that it just comes with the territory. Like, executives have the higher paychecks by comparison and lots of different perks. And so some people will just say it comes with the gig. Like stress is just a part of it and it is what it is. And, I'm a believer of like, it can't just be what it is. But would love to hear your thoughts on people that are just like, I just got to deal with it.
Yeah, well, when we just deal with it, that's where unfortunately we many of us end up in that burnout state, and it can creep on us. And I'll be, you said you talk a lot about your state. I just, my husband and I just finished authoring a book, which took about 2 years through the pandemic. And I didn't realize it, but on the end stage this winter, I was facing the very early stages of burnout. Now I'm an executive wellness coach, and I thought, oh my gracious, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And when we talk about, maybe we can bring in the word boundaries, like I got so engrossed in what I was doing. I loved it, but it took its toll. And I didn't put the boundaries on setting. I mean, there was some nights I was working till 3 a.m. on my book, where I should have just gone to bed early. So I didn't put those boundaries in place, and I didn't have those non-negotiables. Or if I did, I just didn't listen to them. So I think, to bring up that boundary word, it's so, so key, right? And just have, what are our boundaries going to be in our work and in our life?
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, I think it's important to understand that stress in itself is not a bad thing. We need that stress, challenges for motivation. Imagine if we had no stress. I'm sure that sounds great, but we do need a certain amount of stress. It's when chronic stress becomes unmanageable. That's when, we may say it comes with the territory, but we can still implement some strategies to cope with stress, whether it's, whether it's 5-10 minutes per day, just to break that stress cycle. One of the things I've always been passionate about is really reinforcing the message that as a personal trainer, for our physical health and our mental health. We want to, I've always shared this quote, we spend the first half of our life sacrificing our health for our wealth, and then the second half using our wealth to regain our health. So when we reflect on that, it's important to, in some capacity, whatever that means to each individual person, to start, incorporating those stress management techniques to prevent burnout.
Yeah.
I love that thought because it is so true. Like, I was just talking to some girlfriends about, in our 20s, like our diet was like vodka and pizza. And, we were in great shape and all these sorts of things. And now in my 40s, I'm eating kale and, smoothies and all these sorts of things. But it is just like all this extra effort for supplements and personal trainers and these to try to regain some of that youthful, like, feeling that we had in our bodies. So that's a really good way to think about it. And when you flip that, is a good opportunity for us to make the changes sooner than later.
Yeah.
We've gotten young people listening to learn ahead.
Yeah. And I may just add, I love quotes. I love that one that Ruvi, we actually shared it in our book. If you want to come back to it, but a couple little things here is to really zone in on what's the smallest thing you can do today to make a big difference. And for executives, it may mean, and I do this all the time with executives like coaches, even maybe sometimes work with their admin assistants, like you need to carve out that time. I'll give an example. One executive I coached, I said, how do you decompress during the day? What's your health break or whatever? And he said, well, I walk to the washroom. I said, well, that's it. We can do better than that. So it's a case of maybe just carving out that's pockets of time that you can have, even if it's just 10 minutes, just to put on a little meditation or to walk around the building. But to go, it's typically with executives, and I'm sure those listening here, they're probably very much the same, is our meetings are back to back. Now, some organizations are getting better now, putting hard boundaries around, the 50-minute meeting and making sure they have a hard stop so they have that 10-minute buffer. But I know a lot of executives I coach, they're literally like hanging up the phone and going to another Zoom call within a matter of a minute or two, or eating their sandwich, chasing one meeting to the other, right? So it's really a case of, as I said here, we kind of slow down to speed up. So if there's one takeaway I'd like to say today, is just we need to slow down to speed up. And what's that one thing, just one small thing we can do today that could make all the difference?
Yeah, and I didn't realize just the huge benefit of even a short walk until I got a dog.
Oh, yeah.
And I got a dog, and then it just happened that I got him right before the pandemic, but it was like around noon, he needs to go out. And, that's the time for his walk. And, we'd take a 10-15 minute walk, nothing major, but I started doing that every day because he needed to go. And you're right, just because sometimes it would just be that 10-minute break.
Yeah. And
like,
sometimes
in
that's all you
between
need.
things.
Yeah.
And that reset of just getting the fresh air, walking, moving, that space to just think about whatever comes to mind, not having to talk to people, like that really did make such a difference in my day of being able to just decompress. And the fact that it happened in the middle of the day, it was like you get all wound up and then you decompress and you get all wound up and then you can decompress again. There's definitely a lot to what you're saying in making just those small.
And have someone be accountable, like many have admin assistants or someone or a coworker, or set your phone, say, like, this is a non-negotiable. At 12 o'clock I am walking my dog. That dog needs to go out, and come heck or high water, I'm out at 12 o'clock. Right.
Yeah. And those walks and getting outside too, that can also improve our sleep as well. Or if we're not going outside frequently, that can impact our sleep as well. So I think we don't realize just how, our work life can start impacting the rest of our lives from sleep. Even if we're stressed after a long day and we don't decompress, we can take all that stress into our time with our family. We're not present with those moments through the weekends, even, so it can really start to filter into all areas of our lives. So it's just breaking up those, just incorporating those small incremental stress techniques can help.
Awesome. And Lisa, earlier you mentioned your book, and I want to come back to that
Sure.
because I know in your book you talk about the 5 stages of burnout. And so I'd love to hear a little more about that, and start to have a little framework as we discuss around what that looks like.
Yeah, and this, thank you for asking. We titled it. It was an article that ended up becoming in our book, and it was through an interview with Mr. Carlos, who's a managing director of Wellness Orbit, and he very succinctly and aptly, pointed out the 5 distinct phases of burnout. So really quickly, the first 2 are, we're starting on that burnout path, and we're riding the adrenaline high, and we're getting so much done, and we're riding on that positive stress cycle, right? But then as that becomes short-lived, that burst of productivity, and there are consequences and negative consequences, such as we run out of steam, we get irritable, angry, nervous, we're getting lots done, but we then start taking it out on others. We maybe get insomnia that Ruvi talked about. So then we enter that 3rd stage of burnout, where the emotional stress really starts to manifest as physical exhaustion. We're on that treadmill, we can't stop, we're tired, we can't sleep, but we start to experience different health issues, which may again be contributed to poor diet, lack of exercise, poor sleep. And we're so craving that peace. We're exhausted, but we just feel we can't stop. But then what happens when we get to phase 4, a fundamental mood shift and health crisis can start to happen, right? And, our bodies just start imploding, and we start noticing things like, autoimmune issues show up, or a whole, any other. And really, of course, we want to try and prevent getting to that stage. But then if we don't nip things in the bud and maybe get the support of, an executive wellness coach like ourselves, or a therapist, or whoever, depending on where you are in your burnout phase, when we hit that 5th phase, we are really sadly almost at that, the start of depression, or maybe in the throes of depression. And as I cited earlier with the Google director who was on a podcast sharing a story, he was to the state where he lost all his joy, his enthusiasm for work. He realized he was in a depression, and he just could not get out of bed in the morning. And can I just share a little story that he shared, which, maybe we can talk about it, or just to leave this for what it's worth. Well, what really struck me about his story was that he shared with, and this is not to throw shade on Google or anyone, because I know it happens, but he shared a story that when he came back, he took a sabbatical, or took a leave, but when he came back, the leaders and everyone would ask him how his sabbatical was. And he said, it wasn't a sabbatical, it was a mental health leave. And that really struck me, because it just reinforced again that stigma that's still potentially out there, that we cannot use the words mental health leave, that for whatever reason, right, that they had to call it a sabbatical. And he just really, he highlights that, that really brings that out. So I thought, so yeah, there's the 5 stages, and there's that, but also, of course, we want to prevent getting to that 5th stage of depression. And we want to be able to be comfortable in saying, I need a mental health leave.
Yeah, and I want to dig into that stigma a little bit. It's so funny. Like I said, I'm very outspoken about my own journey. I've gone through depression. I deal with anxiety, and I speak very openly about it. And I remember my mom asking me one time when she overheard me telling a stranger about my depression. She's like, "Why do you keep talking about that? Why are you letting people in your business? They're going to judge you." And she was like so concerned about it. And my response was, that's exactly why I talk about it, because most people from the outside look at me and perceive me as having it all together. I've even had people be like, "Oh, you don't have problems. Your life is just perfect." And I'm like, no, hot mess over here, hot mess. And so that is one reason that I do talk about my own struggles and journey, is to help remove that stigma. And I think that stigma is that much greater when you are in a leadership role, because you are sort of, especially by those that are under you, kind of put on this pedestal as the one that is leading and guiding and has all the answers. And it's almost like, how do I tell these people who, air quotes, look up to me, that I'm struggling.
Yeah.
How do I tell my peers, because especially, leading marketing, there's been a lot of conversations about marketing not having the proper seat at the table, not being taken seriously. So then if, you're struggling with these things as well,
Mhm.
you add a layer of being
Absolutely.
a female executive, or,
Mhm.
someone who presents as female, being a minority on top of that. Like there's all these layers that, in my opinion, make it so much more difficult to be able to say like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
struggling.
Well,
You
if
know?
I could just add there, and I'll defer to Ruby, of course, give her some airtime. But I have a executive coach who we co-mentor each other, and he was a CEO of a healthcare, and he works a lot with CEOs of healthcares. And he said, we're talking about preparing for this interview and about the term burnout. And he said, I got to be honest, I don't know if I've ever heard an executive say I'm burnt out. That's not to say they weren't burnt out, but they've never used the term burnt out. And I thought that struck me as really interesting.
Yeah, people say I'm
Yeah.
stretched thin,
Yeah.
I'm stressed.
Yeah. An employee may likely say they're burnt out, but he said, I've never heard a senior leader or an executive. And I thought that, but many are by the statistics I shared earlier, right? But they've never used that term. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, one of the myths of burnout is that, you're weak or someone who's burnt out is weak, and which is actually not true, because some of the most motivated, energetic, productive employees are the ones that are actually burnt out. So that is one of the common myths. And I think the fact that more and more people are starting to talk about it, making it, and we start to realize that I'm not the only one who's struggling. And in some areas, and especially in some companies, the more conversations, the more training that they have, the more resources that they provide. And it creates a safe space, for the employees to
Yeah.
feel that. And communication is key. If you have a supervisor that you can go to and say, I'm really struggling and I need, some support. And not just, it's great. I love the idea of, taking a mental health day, but if someone is at that stage 5 burnout, it takes more than just one day.
Right.
It may
Yeah.
need actually diving in,
Yeah.
looking at their workload, looking at their shift, things like that. So, but I think it really does start with creating that safe space in the
Yeah,
workplace.
and you said an important word there, communication. Like we heard about it, we've seen cases of leaders doing videos and vignettes of themselves during the pandemic, right? And that they're doing this. And I actually cite one in a book who gave me permission. He said, like, I'm taking a mental health leave day. And he's the CEO of an organization. He came out and he did a video or a message. And he said, I encourage any employee that needs a mental health leave day to take it. And he really set the bar there and set the tone. And so we need more of that, because I think it happened during the pandemic, but now we've been such playing catch up mode and everything that I'm fearful that we stepped away and we're losing that sight of the importance of really tending to our well-being, and it's back to business at hand, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that we do here at Tegrita, is like as a leadership team, we are all very, very transparent with our own struggles. And, there have been times where I've sent a Slack, like, I'm taking a nap. Like, I have hit a
Yeah,
wall. I'll
good.
be back in an hour or two. Like, I need to just
Yeah, good for
regroup.
you.
Or,
Good for you.
and what I have seen, because in a lot of companies, an executive being like, I'll be back, I'm taking a nap, would be frowned upon. But what I have seen with our team is exactly what you said, in that everyone else is a lot more transparent. Like, my team knows I struggle with anxiety. I've had people come to me and be like, hey, my anxiety is really triggered when this happens. What have you done to, deal with that? And people that I don't normally talk to on a day-to-day, but they see my own transparency. And so I do think that that is so important as leaders, because early in my career, when I did struggle and did deal with burnout and being on that go treadmill, or hamster wheel, as some people call it, I don't think I ever felt comfortable being able to, say that. Like I might call in sick and, you do the fake, but I would never, in the early stages of my career say like, I need a mental health day. Like, I'm really struggling here.
Yeah. And I think, if I could just give, because I always like to give takeaways, and I know we'll wrap up in a second here, but we did a 6-month contract with a team of executives in a hospital during the pandemic. And once a month, as part of along with the individual coaching we supported them with on, employee or executive well-being, we did an executive wellness circle where we would do stress mastery, healthy eating, different things. And it was just so heartwarming to see them open up and to laugh. And, they were in a safe space, and you could tell that this was just something it was new to them, and they had never experienced this before. And it really opened up that, that level of communication and understanding each other and opening up their vulnerability. And I thought, right on, like we need to do more of that. And that's, certainly.
Because everyone thinks that they are the only ones struggling, but in reality, we are all probably dealing with similar issues in just different, different circumstances.
Yeah,
but
we have that armor. We put on that armor, right? As executives, we wear that cloak of armor.
So I love what you do, Brandi, how you communicate, and you have that safe space with your team, because I'm sure that enables them to come to you as well. So that's great.
Yeah, we thankfully, knock on wood, have really low turnover. And I definitely would attribute like being a safe space where people can, be authentically themselves as one of those things.
Nice.
I want to shift to my last question. And Ruvi, I'll start with you, but then Lisa, I definitely want to hear your thoughts as well.
Sure.
We've talked a lot about what burnout is and how people get here. I want to talk about measures of how do we avoid it. You both talked about the importance of like not waiting until it gets bad to, trying to cure it, but actually thinking about prevention. And so what measures can we take to try to avoid experiencing burnout?
Well, I would say number one, identify what areas or the stresses that are currently in your life. We can't fix anything if we're not aware of it. So, just writing down a list of everything, maybe commitments, or things that are stressful or challenging right now. And then taking a really good look and seeing where can some adjustments be made? How could you perhaps clear your calendar? Can you start saying no to overcommitting? So starting from number one, taking a look at your calendar for this month, for May, where in your calendar or what areas can you take a good look at and start making some changes?
I like that. No is a complete sentence. And, sometimes we forget that.
Yeah. And if I could just add to that, and of course, being executive wellness coaches and specializing in stress mastery and burnout, as two areas, seek out the support. It could be a buddy. It could be an executive wellness coach like Ruvi and I. And just to give you another little personal story, like coming out of my burnout, Ruvi, we worked together quite closely, and I would make myself accountable to her, and I'd say, Ruby, here's some personal goals. And we're on WhatsApp, and we'd relay back and forth, and she nicely would come back the next day. So how did you do with that goal? And it was amazing. And like I said, I'm an executive wellness coach, but it doesn't matter. I mean, we all have our personal issues and our fallibilities, we're fallible, right? And so, reach out to someone. It could be if you're really in the end stage, the fifth stage, reach out to a therapist. You really do need that. And otherwise, maybe an executive wellness coach or someone like ourselves, or just a buddy at work. Just have someone that you can talk to and share, because that's really the first starting point, is just acknowledging it, openly communicating, and then get some accountability or get some support. Right.
Yeah. And then I want to, you guys brought up something to do earlier that I want to bring back up, and that's the B word, the boundaries. You talked about boundaries and non-negotiables as a way to prevent burnout. And so I want to, we touched on it a little bit earlier in our discussion, but this is one, like understanding and really enforcing your own boundaries and what is non-negotiable for you. I know it's made such a huge difference in my own life. So I'd really like to have you guys both to address the B word, because I know from just talking to others that boundaries, especially in the workplace, is something that's difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, again, I was talking to my co-mentor there earlier, and we were talking about executive stress and burnout. And he said, one thing that he coaches a lot, especially around time management, because poor time management, right, leads to poor energy management or vice versa. And so one thing he said he really coaches around a boundary is to eat the frog first thing in the morning. Eat that frog first thing in the morning. So tackle your most challenging things, because what happens is procrastination, right? we want to avoid that, obviously. And so when we don't just address things head on, we procrastinate, and that we ruminate, and then that just compounds and compounds through the day, through the week. We keep putting it off. So whatever it is, whatever the challenging assignment is, just tackle it, get it done, get it off your plate. And that for me is a real key boundary, is that like if there's something that I know I have to do, or I've been putting it off, I get it done. I just tackle it first thing. And it's just amazing how it frees your mind and just frees you up to do other important work, right?
And then Ruvi, what about you? What are your thoughts around the B word?
Yeah, so I took a different take on this with one of my clients, because she's always doing everything for everyone else, really committed to everyone else. So in our discussions, I said, okay, let's put one boundary in place just for you. What did you love doing that you don't do anymore because, you've decided that, no, you don't have the time for? And she said, well, I used to love painting. As a child, I used to love painting, but I just don't have the time, or I'm not that creative. And, I just don't think I could do that anymore. And then I said, why not? You set that boundary on yourself that you can't do it. You don't have the time. How about we reframe that and include something that you enjoy every day, or every week rather, where it's just something for you. You take yourself out, whether it's painting in the park. It doesn't even have to be perfect. And I think we've lost the idea that we can be happy, that we can have fun. It doesn't have to be all go, that even just incorporating something creative for yourself, even in the kitchen, that is a boundary that you can set, where you decide, I'm going to spend some time with me. I'm going to do something that I like. So we can look at it that way too, especially for people that find it difficult to say no. We'll start saying yes to you. So that's the way to flip it.
I love that. I received that same advice years ago, and it caused me to change my schedule. So like now on Fridays, I realized that my Friday afternoons were ridiculously unproductive. Like it was almost like I'm here, but I'm just here. And so when I got that advice, I actually, like, based on my, I'm divorced. And so based on my schedule for my son, I always have Friday afternoons free. Like I'm, don't have my son. And so I changed my schedule so that on Fridays, I stop working at 1:00. And so from 1:00 to 6:00 every Friday, I know that I have that time to do what I enjoy, whether it's happy hour with a girlfriend, scheduling a massage, whatever it is that I feel like, laying on the couch and reading a book, or sometimes just laying on the couch and sitting still. I know that I have that corner of time every week. So, I might miss out on lunch a couple of days, or I might have a couple of late nights, or, whatever the case may be. That same advice led me to say, you know what, I really wasn't getting much done on Friday afternoons anyway. So, my job's not suffering because it really wasn't productive. So now I, as a person, am experiencing that benefit. And that's a hard boundary. Like every blue moon, I adjust my schedule for something important. But generally speaking, my team knows, get it from me, before 1:00 on Friday, or wait till Monday. Like it's people have learned that. So talking about our challenges is just the first step, and nothing changes if nothing changes. And so in traditional therapy, the therapist gives the client some homework. And I guess in this case, you guys kind of are the therapist. We always flip that on its head and ask our guests to give our audience some homework. And so I am a believer in taking action. I always like to have a clear next step. So we like to have the one thing that people can do to move the needle in the right direction. And I know you guys have given us a number of suggestions throughout this episode, but I'd love for you each to quickly distill it down to one. What is the one action item you want our listeners to take?
Well, I think we've talked about it, but just to really, bring it all full circle is to just look at your calendar today. And where where will you commit to your health and well-being? And where can you block out 10 minutes, 30, ideally an hour, or maybe like in my case, it might be taking one day. I used to always work through Sundays. Recently, through Ruvi and our discussion, I just committed to just taking Sundays completely off now. And I do not. And that was part of my recovery process. I want to get back to church and do fun things for me. So for me, I scheduled that full day. I may have to work a little extra in the evenings to do that, but now I know I have a full day to decompress and recharge, and that's working so well. Yeah. So just look for that one hour, one half a day, or maybe a full day, whatever, but just some me time to decompress, recharge, and, realize that life is worth living.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other action for you, Ruvi?
Yes. One thing I've seen work really well is when people just start taking a 10-minute walk every day. Just start for 10 minutes. And within a week, almost always I hear, oh my gosh, I went 20 minutes. This time I went 30 minutes. It's so much easier than I realized. So start incorporating that 10-minute walk and you will not regret it.
Yeah. Awesome. So for those listening, we've got 2 action items. We're going to start walking for 10 minutes every day, which is totally doable. And the second is we're going to take a close look at our calendar, and we are going to find some corner of time that we can consistently block out for me time.
Me time. Yeah.
Well, Lisa, Ruvi, I have enjoyed our discussion, but that's our time for today. Before we go, I'm sure there are some people listening who are like, oh, I need to talk to you more. So how can our audience connect with you?
Okay, well, I'm available again. You can connect with me through LinkedIn, Lisa Kelly on LinkedIn, or through our website, Workplace Wellness Center of Excellence. So that's workplacewellnesscoe.com. And you can learn more about our book through there, our podcast, and our programs and services, especially our executive coaching services and our programs.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything you want to add, Ruvi?
The best place for me is on LinkedIn, Ruvi Makuni, and to add to what Lisa said, but LinkedIn will be the best for me.
Awesome. Well, we will make sure to put all of those links in the show notes. So wherever you are watching or listening this podcast, all the links that Ruvi and Lisa have shared are there so that you can connect, continue to learn from them, and if you're interested, to be able to work with them as well. Ruvi, Lisa, thank you so much. I have enjoyed our discussion, but it's time to go. I can't believe we're already at the end.
Yeah. Well, take care, everyone.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
We will see you next time.
Okay. Bye.
You've been listening to Revenue Rehab with your host, Brandi Starr. Your session is now over, but the learning has just begun. Join our mailing list and catch up on all our shows at revenuerehab.live. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at Revenue Rehab. This concludes this week's session. We'll see you next week.